film or series lit your fuse and made you have to tell stories on screen?
It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it was because I can't remember a time in my life when I didn't want to make movies. Before I knew what a director was, I just knew that I wanted to make movies. But I think one really crucial one and early one was seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark. My parents had it recorded on VHS on a very worn out tape, and it was just magical to me. And it had a bit of everything. It had fun and adventure, and it had scary parts as well, with faces melting, all of that stuff. And that's something I use as a reference still. When people ask about Shazam, or it's like, oh, there's a bit of scary stuff in there. I was like, yeah, that's I grew up on like Raiders of the Lost Ark, which really made me, it lit my fuse.
Ah, well, now, how old were you when you saw it? And do you feel as passionately about the next two, let's say?
I was probably a little too young. I mean, this was in the sort of mid '80s, so I was probably like 6 or 7, maybe. I was quite young when I first saw it, and I mean, yeah, I loved the other two as well. I mean, I remember my mom really saying that, oh, the second one is pretty, gruesome. Like they take out the heart of a kid, and like, oh, it's like, okay, well, I'm ready to watch it. And I was like, hey, that guy's not a kid. I'm a kid. He's pretty old. That guy, he can handle getting his heart pulled out. No, and Last Crusade was just as fantastic. I had the novelization and everything that I would read. Yeah.
Yes. Well, now, when you were finding your way as a filmmaker, what movie or series came along and you watched it and found that it was so good, it made you think, wow, should I be doing this? Can I ever rise to a level like that?
That happens all the time. I mean, you see a lot of things, especially like technically complex things, like seeing, Mad Max Fury Road. It's like, how does George Miller do that? And a lot of, like, to go back to Spielberg, a lot of like how Spielberg stages and blocks and frames his scenes. I mean, he's a master at that. They're just moving the camera and moving the people around it. So that makes me go like, yeah, I don't know if I could do that, but the way I see myself is that I'm my own worst critic in many ways. Like, I think I suck. Like, I don't think I'd be a fan of David F. Sandberg if I was someone else. But I do have sort of a belief in future David, where it's like, if I get to keep making movies and I keep at it, I will learn more and more, because I've already made quite a lot of progress, I think. And you learn so much more with each movie that I think that if I keep doing it as much as possible and keep learning, I might get there eventually. So while I watch things like that, I may think that, yeah, I couldn't do that now, but give it time and maybe I'll get there. And that's why I want to make as many movies as possible, as quickly as possible. Like, now that this one's over, I'm like super eager to find the next one and get into it as soon as possible, because that's the only way to get better at making movies, to keep making them.
Well, now, whether it was the success of a film you made, or maybe approval from someone whose opinion really mattered to you, what would you say first gave you the confidence that, in fact, you did belong and you should be doing this?
Well, it was interesting because a big thing that happened was that, my wife and I, we were making short films, no budget short films, just her and I. That's how we made Lights Out, that, had Hollywood discover it and led to all of this. But, we were making these no budget shorts. And what happened was that they were getting popular online, going viral. And pretty soon after, I started seeing films that copied what we were doing, in our little shorts. And at first it was very frustrating because these were professional productions, and I was like, I was a broke guy living in Sweden, with no connections to Hollywood. So to me, it was like, well, if you wanted that, why don't you just hire me? I can do that for you. Um, but it also made me realize that, well, obviously I'm doing something right. Like if professionals are copying what I'm doing, then it feels like I can probably do this. And it's and now that I've actually got the chance to make movies and have a bit of a career going, it's more flattering, than frustrating to see that happen. And I know that it's not just coincidence, because I've worked with people who have worked on some movies where they're like, yeah, the director showed us this short of yours, and he was like, yeah, we got to do something like this. So that's another thing. But now, yeah, I've had moments. I've been pretty recently. I saw an interview with Sam Raimi where he was talking about Shazam, how much he liked it, and he was impressed by it. And I'm a huge Sam Raimi fan, so those kinds of things where you get your heroes and idols sort of their approval. I mean, that's the ultimate
Yeah.
flattery.
What would you say was the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome to allow you to turn the films that influenced you into your own cinematic language as a filmmaker?
Well, my biggest obstacle is usually me, because I'm this introverted, autistic guy who doesn't, I often feel that I don't really have a Hollywood personality,
Mm.
and the big thing I had to overcome was that when, back in Sweden, when I was making no budget things, I was doing everything by myself or like with my wife. But I would, shoot them and edit them and score them and do visual effects and all that stuff. And sometimes I would do things all on my own with animation and things like that. So when I first started making features, the big challenge was just like working with other people, like communicating your vision. And that's something that I'm still trying to get better and better at, because that is the job of a director, to make other people understand and see what's in your head. But that was a big challenge. That like even like when you were in the editing room or something, I would sit there, on the first movie, like looking over the shoulder of the editor and being like, oh no, yeah, I don't know. But I've really improved in that area, where I've realized that I don't have to do that. I can just talk to them, say, this is the feeling I'm after, this is what I'm looking for, and then leave them to it and come back and look at it. And sometimes you might have to go and add 2 frames there, but usually I've found that you can get so much better results when you trust other people, and you don't have to be doing it all yourself. You can actually get their input and their creativity, and it's that's the way how movies turn out the best, when it's a big collaboration.
Well, now you mentioned autistic, and I can imagine that when you were doing everything, you had everything under control. Well,
Yeah.
so when you were in a situation where you are basically the manager of a collaborative team, how did you overcome that part of it?
I'm still working on it. I mean the only way you can do it is to keep at it, I think, and to keep, with practice, it makes you, more perfect. I mean, because just like, being more open and talking about things, like even in situations like this, is something where I've come a really long way, and it's just because I've had to do it so much. The first time when I went back to Sweden after having made 3 movies, I got to be on this Swedish talk show, and it was kind of funny because Swedes in general as well are kind of introverted and a little bit more quiet. And I was on this talk show, and I was like, yeah, talking about Shazam and doing all this. And afterwards, they were telling me that, oh, you're so American. You're so just like talking about things. Like usually when we talk to Swedish directors, they give such short answers and they don't want to talk about it. And that was like the biggest compliment ever. Like, ooh, I'm like an American in my outgoingness. But the difficult thing is for me that I can do it for sort of short periods of time, and then I need to sort of recharge, or I will get very depressed and stuff like that. And that's the difficult thing with movies, is that they don't happen in short bursts. They're marathons, you know. So it's hard. I'm still working on it, but I think I'm improving. Although I saw that behind the scenes thing with Helen Mirren, where she was describing me as a very, very quiet director. So I was like, I still have some way to go, I think.
Yeah, but it sounds like this brings out the best in you. So now, one final question: what burned in you to tell the Shazam story? It certainly is different from the horror movies that you made, but when you reference Raiders of the Lost Ark, I can certainly see some connective tissue between that sort of Harrison Ford like superhero. But you tell me, what burned in you to tell this it's, and for a DC property, it's lighthearted, and it has its scary moments, obviously, but it is certainly a different sensibility, especially when the first one came out, to the other films that were coming out in the DC canon at that time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love horror, and I want to do more horror as well. But the funny thing was that the studio reached out to me, you know, after I did Annabelle Creation. They gave me a call and were like, hey, would you be interested in directing Shazam? And I didn't really know what it was. I'd heard the name before. So they pitched it to me as like big with superpowers, which like that sounds awesome. So I was very confused and surprised why they thought of me for this. So it's like, oh, is it because I worked with all the kids in Annabelle Creation? What is it? But I didn't want to question it, because then they might question it and go like, yeah, why the hell are we calling David for? So I just want to, okay, yeah, let's do it, sure. But the thing for me was that why I really want to do it was I felt like, okay, this is a chance to go bigger and broader, and like not just stick into the horror lane, because I think I can do other things as well, like, you know, have a bit of comedy and you know, it's still a little bit of horror, but that sort of wish fulfillment. So it felt like an opportunity to grow as a filmmaker and tell the kind of stories that I loved as a kid, you know, and still do.
Now you're a franchise guy.
I guess so. but no, I want to do more, you know, standalone little horror movies as well, and like science fiction. I haven't done that yet, so it's like I just want to keep creating as much as possible and keep growing and keep getting to work with these, you know, legends who I can learn so much from. So yeah, I just want to keep going.